Good afternoon, everyone, and good morning to all of those of you that have joined us from the States and overseas. Thank you for joining today's webinar in partnership with Iris FMP. We're going to be talking about how to select a new global payroll solution. We'll just wait a few seconds for everyone to join us. We'll just cover housekeeping and then I'll pass it over to Fran. So this is always the interesting time when I have to try and keep quiet just for a few seconds for everyone to join and just to get settled in. Okay, so shall we start? So as I said, thank you for joining us for this afternoon's webinar with Iris FMP. We have Fran and Matt who will be introducing themselves to discuss how to select a new global payroll solution. As always, this webinar will be recorded and will be made available in a few hours. So you will be sent a link again with the slides. We do want this to be interactive, so if you do have any questions, please add them into the chat box, and hopefully we'll get a chance to answer those. And if we don't, then I'm sure Fran and Matt will be happy to answer them after the webinar. So thanks once again for joining us, and over to you, Fran.
Matt, why don't you introduce the agenda for today?
Yeah, thanks, Fran. First and foremost, thank you for taking the time to be with us today. Appreciate this is a busy time for payroll professionals. And we hope that you find some of the content useful. The following slides will support you in current and future global payroll requirements. For those that are going to be listening via recording, please feel free to reach out anytime with any questions. Matt.Sheridan@iris.co.uk and fran.williams@iris.co.uk. So just introductions. Fran, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Fran Williams. I am the product director for Iris Managed Services. Spent around about 15 years in payroll, both domestically and globally, working for companies such as Zelis, NGA Human Resources, MorePay, and finally, and delighted to be working for Iris FMP.
Thanks, Fran. Myself, Matt Sheridan, Head of Sales for Iris Managed Services. Again, not quite as long as Fran, been around about 13 years, mainly in domestic and international payroll, but also international HR consultancy as well. Predominantly on the other side of the coin to this, actually, in terms of commercial roles. So, yeah, keen to talk to you today. We're going to cover best practice, on how you select a new global payroll solution, a little bit on Iris FMP, and then hopefully leave some time for questions and answers.
So into the content, Matt.
Yeah. So selecting your global payroll solution. Look, we believe that for any project, especially one as business critical as payroll, there needs to be almost a process before the process that clearly articulates the problem that you're trying to solve. This could be one country high volume, multi-country low volume, consolidation, global reporting, integration with HRIS, lots of different scenarios, okay? But you need to define that first before you can start the process. So in order of events, this is the process that we've outlined, and this is more of a generic view. Different companies will have different requirements, but we'll start off with assessment, clearly articulates the problem you're looking to solve, definition of that problem, engagement of the right companies to solve that problem, and then how you choose that best vendor. Spoiler alert, that might not always be the cheapest, and then how to successfully onboard that vendor. So that's what we're going to take you through today.
So we're going to first start by looking at your current payroll setup. So there's some key questions here, and it's really a great opportunity for you as global payroll professionals to stop and reflect on how you do things today. So you may be running lots of different suppliers, which is often the case. It could be you're doing it through an external global provider. It could be you're doing it via localized in-country service providers. You could be running software either in your headquartered country or in one of your foreign subsidiaries. You could be using a PEO on an ERO provider, or you could be using, which is more of the case more than often not, a mixture of all of the above. But I think it's worth kind of stopping to just acknowledge that payroll can be a complex affair with lots of different types of payroll, and it can be very dependent on your own business's global expansion plans and the journey that you're after. It could be that you're forming a HR or global HR and payroll department for the first time, or it could be you're looking to mature that function. And it could be that the headcount in some of the countries that you operate in is quite small, and that tends to reflect where you are from a global payroll strategy. But again, it's a great opportunity to take the time and sit back and reflect on those individual providers and really start off with a list. I would recommend just list those providers, list the headcount that you've got in those countries. You may have multiple providers in one country, but list out those contract end dates and list out those costs, because that list is going to be really vital as you move through the next steps. But in terms of kind of assessing your current challenges, before you look at how you look to improve your global payroll function moving forward, potentially with a new vendor, I think it's really take time to evaluate your current challenges. Now, there's lots of kind of challenges listed here. It could be you've got some poor payroll accuracy with a localized vendor. It could be the customer service could improve. It could be there's some functionality gaps with the solutions that you've got in place. It could be because you started off new with a vendor, and let's say it's a vendor with a low employee count, or it's a PEO or ERO provider. You could be paying a significant cost that you've not had a chance to rationalize as your employee count has grown in that country. Could be that you don't have the country coverage that you need for today, or potentially for your future company's growth aspiration plans. Could be around technology and integration. But I think if we kind of take a moment to look at a few of these, it's really kind of worth kind of working through and getting a rounded view. So make sure that you contact multiple stakeholders, whether they be in payroll, HR, finance, to get a rounded view of kind of what the service looks and feels like for your organization as well. I think the other thing that's really key as well is think about the customer. The customer in this is the person that's getting paid in Brazil or Germany. It's the employee. So and I'm sure you deal with their pain and frustration on a day-to-day basis, and also the delight for the service that you deliver to them. But take the time to ask them how they would like to see things improved as well. In terms of accuracy, have a real good think about, is it subjective, or is it something you measure potentially with a payroll accuracy metric? If you've got problems with customer service, do you have clear SLAs in place? Do you need them? And just think about when you move into the next phase, is that something you want to put on your hit list to resolve? Look at your costs. Don't just look at the price that you pay the vendor that delivers your payroll in Spain, but look at the end-to-end process. Look at the number of workarounds you've got on that process. How could that be improved? And assess the cost on the processes as a whole, not just the cost with that vendor. Look at the coverage and plan for the future, not just for the now. And speak to the people that execute the growth of a new business, understand their long-term plans. From a technology point of view, there's no quick wins, and technology is difficult, even domestic payroll. But when you go global, it can tend to be even more complex. So have a think about APIs. They can be expensive, but they can add a lot of benefits as well. And I think it's kind of essential that you get that rounded view. So reach out to Mel and the GPA network. Maybe they can put you in touch with a similar peer in the network, and you can get a feel for what their experience is like. No one wants to be a fun sponge in this, so try and get a really fair and reasonable assessment of where you are. But the key is continually question and ask, are my solutions right, and how could I improve them? And Matt's going to take you through some examples.
Fun sponge, I like that one, Fran. Questions to ask yourself. So really, before you start getting into asking questions of potential vendors, there are a number of questions that you need to ask yourself as managers, as payroll professionals, as organizations, to ensure that you're aligned before you go out to the market. So it's really critical that you understand what sort of business you are and what sort of business you're going to be. You know, is it PEO that you're looking for, or EOR, multi-country, volume consolidation, etc. Let's just make sure that we're not only fixing today's problems, but we're looking ahead to tomorrow's. So, you know, if you're going into Spain as a proof of concept to roll out to wider European countries, you need to make sure that your chosen vendor will be able to handle that scale and the timelines, more importantly, that you're operating to as well. There's lots of questions to ask yourself as documented on the slide. I won't go through each one, but reporting is really key when we're talking about global payroll. We know that quality input leads to quality output. But how do you want to see your reporting? Are you happy to have country level reporting with a different format to other countries? Or is it business critical to have a consolidated global view of reporting? Do you need to integrate with finance software? These are all questions to consider when thinking about reporting, which is normally key to any global payroll solution.
So we're going to look at defining some goals as part of that kind of procurement process. So you've had time to reflect on some of your challenges. I think it's now potentially an opportunity to pivot those challenges into writing down a real clear list of features and functions that you need to be asking the vendors as part of that procurement process. Also reach out to vendors as well. Visit websites, download brochures, gather as much information as you need to not just form that shortlist and assess which vendors can sit on it, but also taking the time to understand what are the current trends within the marketplace and what should you expect for a really great global payroll solution. If you're afraid about the sell, and you know there's always salespeople with targets in the background, just be really upfront with them. Just say, look, at the moment I'm just creating a short list. I'll take some information, but I don't really want to engage. And they'll be fine with that. They'll leave you alone to work through what you need to do. One thing to look out for your list as well, Mel and the team at GPA are working on an updated GPA global payroll vendor matrix to help you work through not just the features and functions that you need, but also point you in the direction of some suitable suppliers as well. So I think Mel, that's due next month. And that'll be a really great asset. But once you've decided, you know, your features, your functionality, whether it's UI, reporting, country coverage, price, what you need to try and do is rank them and weight them in order of preference. What's important to you when making a solution decision? And you can do that by using a scorecard. Now you could assign ticks or points to each element that you're looking to kind of tick off on your feature list. You can weight certain sections above another. For example, functionality you could give a 30% weighting to, price you could give a 30% weighting to. So really think about that. If you've got a procurement team, they will have lots of experience in helping functions within your organization do this. So reach out to them, ask them if you've got a predetermined framework that you could adapt for your individual circumstance. And one of the other things you can do as well, you might want to consider getting some support as part of this process, not just of creating a list and creating a scorecard, but also the whole thing. There are some really great global payroll consultancy firms out there that can come in and assist you with that journey. And if you speak to Mel or the GPA team at the end of this webinar or subsequently, they can help point you in the right direction. But once you've got your list, you've got your scorecard, you can also do a bit of pre-work as well. So looking at reviews within the B2B space, a little bit harder than B2C, but you can go to stuff like Trustpilot. There are other organizations that rate products and services, but Trustpilot's one example. But also try Google. Just type in the vendor's name and click review and see what the customers are saying. The other thing you've got within the industry as well, you've got some great analysts that do a lot of great work where they'll assess the vendors, they'll put them in matrices, and then you can get some really great detailed insights off them. Sometimes that can be quite expensive, and the real kind of great value is behind a paywall. But it's really worth having a thinking about if you want to invest in some upfront insights, particularly because this could be a multi-thousand-pound, multi-million-pound contract, and you're making a decision for the long term. I think then once you're past that stage of speaking to the vendors as well, make sure that you're reaching out for case studies, testimonials. And once you've shortlisted a provider, don't be afraid to kind of ask to speak to some of their customers as well. They should give you, they will hand select the customers, but they should, despite that, you'll be able to get into some frank conversations, and they'll give you the pluses and also the minuses for you to kind of weigh that up. So that's the methodology you start with. And then as we kind of move through, you've really got to kind of work out what you want to achieve by finding a new global payroll supplier. So there's lots of different kind of metrics that you can go through. We've run some surveys with people like GPA and GPMI in the last 12 months, and we've got a sense of the kind of things people are looking for, and you can see a lot of those on the screen today. But one of the things to understand with this is they're really interdependent with each other. And I'll use a couple of examples, right? So if you're looking for improved security, you may be running multiple payroll solutions, multiple providers. You may be manipulating data. That could be to pay people. It could be to consolidate reporting, to kick upstairs to the HR leadership or even the board. That manipulation of data presents a risk because people tend to kind of leave it on hard drives or email it. So finding a vendor can really help you kind of streamline that, your security via improved integrations, and it can remove the need for sending sort of data across borders via spreadsheets, in emails and share files. You would do that via a secure system. That data as well, because it resides in one system through that improved integration, means that you don't have to manipulate that data or often rekey it. So you're going to end up with hopefully less errors, reduced errors as part of that process. And the reduction in manual processes is probably going to be great for you and the team as well. No one gets into payroll to do repetitive administration tasks. And if you can give the team the opportunity to add more value to the business around the payroll process, your colleagues are going to thank you. And it'll also free your up time to add more value to the kind of growth of the business. And that also flows through into the employee experience as well. So ultimately, we spoke about your end customer being the employee. If you pay them accurately on time, every time, they tend to be relatively happy. But let's acknowledge that it's also sometimes a struggle as well. You are employing people in new countries, sometimes for the first time, and often that employee might know more about legislation than you do. So have a think about, is that something a new vendor can help you with when you enter new countries? Can they help educate you and your business around entering that company? And that's where finding vendors with a little more than just payroll knowledge, but also deep legislative knowledge, and maybe even HR support as well, can really add value. And then when we kind of look at, the key considerations for a modern global payroll service, let's pick a couple on here. We've got modern user interface. What's that platform that you're trying to consolidate all your payrolls on going to look and feel like? It's going to cost you kind of potentially hundreds or even millions of pounds to land on that new solution. But is it easy to use? And question as part of that selection process, are you prepared to accept increased functionality over UI, or the opposite way around, a great looking UI that feels like one of the consumer apps that you may use in your day-to-day life, but has less functionality? I think the other thing is it's great having a piece of software, but let's remember payroll processes involve people. So how easy is it for those localized people for you to engage with them directly? Can you communicate with them through the application? Is there query management tools that allow your employees to raise an issue that you can then escalate to your global payroll provider, and even those local expertise to get a quick answer to a query? And is there SLAs around that as well? From a reporting point of view, does the reporting meet your requirements? If you're dealing with multiple suppliers and you're managing a lot of your data via spreadsheets, is there some quick wins? Consolidating gross to net reports to allow a full view of your employee portfolio across the globe and their costs is a great win. But how far do you need to go into kind of advanced analytics? And how deep does that reporting go? Is it configurable? Can you drill through to the data that you need? And how advanced is the analytics? Is it just going to tell you trends, or is it going to predict them? They're all questions you need to be asking as part of that process. From a third party integration point of view, maybe you're looking for some quick wins. Maybe it is you've got a global HR solution or a finance solution that you regularly interact with, and you want to build an API connection. Connectors can be quite rare. Pre-made connectors can be quite rare, which means that configured and bespoke APIs can sometimes be significantly costly. So you've got to assess as part of that process and building that business case, is the kind of juice worth the squeeze? And do you really need an API for passing a file once a month that can be done in 5 minutes? These are all the assessments that you need to be making. And then lastly, and most likely appealing to the audience as global payroll operators, what's the automation like? Maybe it's too early for AI and bots, but is this something that can help field inquiries through a knowledge base, or is this something that can support the input of transactions? Is there guided support, or would you actually prefer to speak to a real person? So once we've understood our goals and we've got a framework, it's now time to engage with the suppliers. And Matt's going to take a moment to take you through what that could look like.
Thank you, Fran. So engagement, you've done your assessment of your processes, you've defined your requirements, and now you're ready to engage. So most of my career, I'm sat on the other side of the coin, which is engaging with prospects, but actually taking a moment to sort of to sit back and look at it from the other side. Actually, we're not too far apart. Any successful outsourcing relationship is built on partnership, and this should start in the procurement process, really. So look, when you're choosing a provider, remember that the sales process should be an organization on their best behavior. Okay, and what we mean by that is timely responses to emails, professional, knowledgeable sales staff, consultants, subject matter experts at your disposal. If you're not getting this when they're sort of pitching for your business, then I suppose alarm bells should be ringing. And a top tip for me is really take the time to invest in discovery. It's vital for both organization and the vendor to understand your position, or where you are currently and where you want to be at the end of the process. There's no specific amount of time in terms of how long this should take, and every company's got different requirements that will differ. But the rule of thumb should be, it should be consultative, number one, in its approach, and not sales-led. The salesperson should only really speak 20% of the time, asking lots of open questions. This is about fact-finding and really understanding the core requirements of the prospect. I suppose if a vendor is confirming that, you know, yes, they're in country and here's the price, then my advice would be buyer beware. Also ask how long it takes to go into a new location. You know, as an organisation, we see at least 30% of our customers start with one country, then branch off to many other countries over a period of sort of, you know, 12 to 36 months. So actually ask how long it takes to go into a new location for that vendor. And if they come back and it's, you know, too quick, then question the due diligence that the vendor has gone through. More often than not, though, it's going to be too slow and a negative response if received. Then you need to really ascertain if this meets your growth demands or not as a vendor, and they can meet up with your scale and timelines around your project. Next slide, please. Okay, questions for potential payroll partners. So, look, the expectation in payroll is to pay accurately, on time, every time. It's something I've been saying for the best part of 15 years. And you never hear, thanks for paying me right this month, you know, said nobody ever. So therefore, when it goes wrong, it goes from 0 to 100 really quick. So of course, accuracy is primary importance, and there should be SLAs that govern that accuracy that is agreed pre-contract. However, look, both buyer and vendor, we live in the real world and mistakes happen. And it's how those mistakes are mitigated and dealt with that is of real importance and should be discussed during the procurement process, you know. An important question to ask, in my view, is, you know, give me an example of a time when something went wrong and how your organisation dealt with it. And as a salesperson, I can say that this used to fill me with dread, this question. But years have gone on, and actually it's a really useful question for both parties. Buyers understand that mistakes happen, especially dealing with high volume of data and ever-changing legislation. But what's really important is knowing that you're working with a partner that, of course, has a disaster recovery process. That's important, and checks and balances. But most importantly, deals with the issue in a timely and professional manner that really limits the impact to the employee, who's ultimately the end customer. So if you find yourself in a position where you're quoting SLAs to a partner, you probably don't have the right one. A top-tier partner gets ahead of the problem and is proactive in their approach of resolution, whilst keeping you informed along sort of every stage, really. And I suppose also what's important and often forgotten with vendors is that there are two customers. Of course, there's the business that they contract with, but there's also a far more important customer, and that's the end customer, aka employees. As a given, employees should not see any material degradation to the service provided when moving partners, but they should be considered in terms of the overall solution that offers employee enhancements. This could be portals, benefits, communication tools, etc. That this will make the project much smoother in terms of working backwards from the employee experience. And I think it's really important for the for the company to think of it in that terms and work backwards from the employee experience. Choose your solution that suits your needs. I mean, look, there are several factors in global payroll solutions, as discussed, and it will be determined in both your current and future state. Okay, but we understand that. But what's really critical to success in choosing a payroll partner is, you know, is the following. You know, does the software and service do what I need it to do now and in the future? What level of service are we getting for the cost? How much work do I need to do versus my chosen provider? Different providers have different solutions. And what experience does the provider have? too often the second question that we get asked in commercial roles is how much is it? The number one, can you do it? But the second question is how much is it? And actually it's on all of us, both company, vendor alike, to really understand what it is that you want and compare that eggs for eggs with other solutions in the market, but not forgetting some of the other factors that are key to making this solution a success. As we're aware, that payroll is the lifeblood of an organisation. It pays your biggest assets, and if you get this wrong, the cost could be huge as a result in terms of attrition. So my plea as a salesperson is keep price, it's very important, but keep price discussions back until you're sure that what you're getting meets your needs. What I would say is a well-presented payroll solution that ticks all the boxes is far more valuable than a solution that meets some of your needs at a lower price. So, Fran, I think you'll now take us through some of the onboarding and transition phase.
Of course I can, thank you, Matt. So one of the things that happens in procurement processes is, as a buyer, you kind of rush ahead, focus on the kind of features, the functions, the price. You kind of select or shortlist a vendor, and then you think, oh, what about the onboarding experience? And in global payroll, this is key, right? So I'm sure you all know on the call that implementing a new global payroll provider is much like trying to stop an oil tanker dead in the water. It takes a long time, and you need to therefore plan out your activity well in advance. If you're consolidating many global payroll providers, you're likely going to have lots of different contractual end dates. And we talked earlier in the session around just having that written down and having a real clear understanding of that. Particularly because some of those contractual terms can be quite sneaky and have auto renewals in. But that's going to help you work out the priority in which you kind of onboard your global payrolls. Big bang approaches are possible, but come with a high risk. So work with your selected new vendor to look for some quick wins. I think the other thing with that as well is try and think about the provider that you're taking the payroll from, your existing provider now, when trying to select which countries to go with first. It could be certain countries are more easy to do. It could be certain providers are easy to work with. So try and think about some quick wins with your new vendor so you can build a relationship up quickly. I think that the biggest thing with this, though, as part of the implementation build process is kind of contingency. So in terms of timelines and that implementations, make sure that you spend a quality amount of time with that new vendor working through their implementation process. All of them should give you a top level project plan and should tell you who the key stakeholders are in that process. But as to meet them, don't take what the salesperson says. Go and ask to meet a project manager. Go and ask to meet an implementation manager, because it will help you feel better about the process. Understand from that new vendor what take-home data they need as a whole, and then for the individual countries as well. And what format can they work with? Are they flexible with that format? One of the challenges you'll face as you begin to work through this is you'll begin to start serving notice with your existing vendors if you decide to move. And you'll find that some of them are quite receptive and helpful. Some of them have charges for extracting data, but some of them also don't make it particularly easy because they will struggle to export the data in the format that you need. So it can be quite hard to work this through without serving notice on your existing providers, but at the very least, you should be factoring it into your implementation plan. From a training perspective, if you're going to roll out a solution with a high component of technology, make sure you really drill down on the training. What training is available? How is it consumed? Is it done remotely? Is it done on site? What audience is it aimed at? Is it aimed at payroll managers? Is it aimed at senior execs? Is it all aimed at HR professionals? Does it include the employee experience as well? Many of the modern payroll platforms come with self-service. So have a look at and consider that employee adoption of that product. What does the training look like for them? Now, it's unrealistic to expect all your employees to engage in a remote session. So do they have videos, the pre-canned training material that you can send on to your employee base? And does it come in the multitude of languages that you need to cover your footprint? But also have a think about, once you've had your new solution implemented and all the people have been trained, obviously you're going to hopefully grow your department. And sometimes you'll have to say goodbye to some colleagues and you'll onboard some new colleagues within your payroll administration function. How will the training work for them over the long term, 12 months, 2 years in? And what does that look like? And you should really try and configure the cost of that training into your total cost of ownership when evaluating the product. So key message: onboarding and transition. Spend the time on this once you've selected a vendor and just double down on the detail. This bit's key for making sure that you get a great platform for the long term, and it's something that sometimes people avoid. My recommendation is to spend more time than you think you should on this area. But obviously, there's a lot of information to take in as part of this process. And while me and Matt have got some beautiful dulcet tones, we thought we would try and summarize this. The slides and the recording will be available via the GPA, but we thought we'd leave you, before we get on to some of the salesy bit, with some top tips, a checklist, the things that you really, really need to think about. Now, we have covered these before, but I think it's just worth us labouring on these points because we think they're really key. So contracts, make sure you have a clear understanding of the existing contracts you've got in place, when they end, and any automatic renewal dates that you've got. From a kind of needs and a preferences point of view, the solution that you're buying, reaffirm with the vendor that it's going to meet your needs for the long term. Don't be afraid to ask very, very detailed questions, and ask those questions repeatedly until you're completely comfortable with the answers that you get. And the reason why that's really, really important is sometimes, unfortunately, some people don't ask detailed questions and they find out 6 months after it's been implemented that it hasn't got a certain feature or function, and that often or not will resurface itself at your door if there's a gap in that functionality or the relationship with the new vendor goes south. So spend the time to dial down on those details. Make sure you validate what your new supplier says. So ask for those reviews, ask for those testimonials, consume the analysis reports. Make sure that you're really finding out from a wider portfolio of people what they think of the product that you're about to buy. And then as part of that process as well, and this is something that's often forgotten, really spend some time to understand who your key contacts will be once that signature is on that contract. So do you have a named implementation owner? Do you have a named training manager? Who will be your manager from an operational point of view? If you've got a service, you'll be probably interacting with someone from a day-to-day basis to run the payrolls across those countries. Find out who that is. Ask to meet them. Ask lots of questions. When you speak to them, and it could be an account manager as well, ask them how they're measured, how their performance managed within their business. How do they judge the health of a payroll or a project? Because that'll get you a sense of the value that those individuals place on you as a customer. And then we've spoke about onboarding before, but really take the time to understand that project. Some global payroll implementations run on time, some don't. And there's some very famous examples of that. So dial down on this detail because it was really important. And also remember that it's not so much just your own vendor that you're looking to replace or your current vendor, but it's also your time and your people's time you need to factor in any timelines as well. So I think that's it for the kind of the content. We hope you find that a really, really valuable summary of how to look for a new global payroll provider. There is an opportunity to ask questions, and I can see we've got some questions coming in. But if you just bear with us for 5 minutes, we just wanted to share with you a little about Iris FMP and why we're so passionate about the business we work for. Matt.
Thanks, Fran. Yeah, look, we'll keep this snappy. This is not really a sales pitch, just an informative that this is what we do. You can see on the slide there, you know, over 30,000 happy customers for all industry sectors across the globe. We're in 135 countries globally, providing payroll solutions, HR services, and payment solutions. 6.9 billion, really big number, or 90% of the global workforce covered by our payroll and HR solutions. We also do a lot in global payment disbursements, nearly 300 million a year now, and established in 1978, so a lot of industry experience. You can see there some of the fantastic brands that we work with, some partners, of course, associations including GPA on there, that we've built up over the years as well. So how can we support you in terms of Iris FMP? I suppose can be summarised, I guess, to the following 4 categories. Simplified, accelerated people performance, right? Put simply, benchmarking, onboarding of the right talent at the right time, paying your talent acquisition, and really maximising what we call time to value, getting the right people in at the right time and up to speed in order to get that value. Trusted excellence, what we mean by that is that from a compliance and a legislation, mandatory benefits, local nuances, taking the complexity out of global payroll, global expertise and local knowledge. So qualified and experienced dedicated payroll managers. We're very big on dedicated contacts within our business, right? The ability to pick up the phone and speak to someone that you've got a relationship with is invaluable and something that we invest in heavily. So having that partnership with yourself is really important. Finally, flexible solutions. So, you know, we're a people-led solution that grows with your organisation, so that you know that you have the ability to scale and pivot really on demand. So the next slide here, I mean, I call this our HCM pizza, right? Probably says a lot about me. But in short, Iris Global will ensure that your business is compliant, that we increase productivity of your business by allowing you to focus on your core business activity. And although, through qualified and targeted engagement, reduce that time to value that we talked about in the previous slide of your global workforce. Global payroll solutions is no longer just about paying people. You know, Iris Global and other top tier outsourcing partners really need to consider, you know, comp and bends, global FX payments, employment law and HR, strategic HR consulting when you need it on demand, recruitment, immigration, mobility, all of that sort of stuff. So yeah, please take that into consideration when thinking about Iris FMP. Fran, do you want to discuss sort of next gen stuff that's happening?
Yeah, so we have been working over the last 12 months to help our customers interact with us in a much more technology-led way. And we've got a solution that we've entitled the Global Employer Portal. But what that helps orchestrate is the relationship between the employees, the employer, which is clearly the people we've got on this call, us as a global payroll provider, and our ICPs or our in-country payroll offerings. So there's lots of great benefits, but look, there's a really simple user interface and dashboard. You can see all the deadlines across all your payrolls, and you understand what processes you need to kind of follow. It helps with a kind of standardized global payroll process. So you can either upload input templates, you can key the employee changes directly into the platform in a digital manner, which means we're not exchanging spreadsheets. There's comprehensive file management as well. So whether we're sending to you or you're sending to us, it's all secure, it's all in the cloud. And then we've got lots of great detailed reports and check-in reports. So ensuring that what you send us and what we calculate and what we send back to you match. That's all done programmatically as well. There's also the ability for query management and issue tracking across all of those 4 components down there. So employees, employer, us as RSFMP, and also our local experts. And then you've got all the kind of things you would expect around employee record management. But that's just one part of our service. The other thing we do, and this is the last slide, I promise, we offer a broad range of services as well. So we've talked today about the employee experience. Matt, you've spoken about the broader services that we can offer. And whether you are looking to employ someone in a country for the first time, and you're looking to create a benefits package that attracts that top talent, we can help you with that. Once you've got that, through our partners, we can help you recruit people. We will then compliantly onboard them with the relevant employment contracts and handbooks. We'll then process the pay, ensure that's done in a timely and accurate manner. We will pay the people, and then right the way through the employee life cycle, when you're developing your workforce globally, we can support with that as well. So we'll kind of pause there, because we offer lots of different services that can be consumed in lots of ways. If you want to reach out to us, we'd be delighted to speak to you around what we can offer. But let's not labour on it, Mel. Let's get into the Q&A.
Okay, so I think one of the, you mentioned early on about PO and EOR. Can one of you just explain what a PO is or an EOR is, please?
Yes.
Yeah, sure. Look, there are nuances between the two, right? But effectively, a PEO or EOR is an organisation that employs the employee. So they take on the liability of that employee, as opposed to just outsourcing that requirement to a vendor such as us. So that's the key difference. There are the nuances between the two, but essentially they take on the liability and the ownership of that employee.
And there's strengths and weaknesses with that. One of the things that's great about PEO or ERO providers is they can help you employ someone really quickly. You don't need to kind of build an established business or tax infrastructure in the country. It can switch on talent like that. So what we find in particular, Mel, is our customers and more broadly the market, they use them in conjunction with global payroll providers and localized providers as well.
And just to confirm, it's professional employer organisation and employer of record. So I think a lot of the POs are now moving to employer of record, aren't they? Sort of moving away from using the PO. So it's just if anybody wants to know more about that. So we do have quite a few questions. Let me just have a look at these. Bear with me. Any advice on communication with your existing payroll provider if you start a payroll vendor change project?
Yes, I think you should involve them if you feel that they're of the right quality. I think you should give them an opportunity, even if they're not, to improve their service. But I think it comes back to what are you looking to achieve? If you're looking to consolidate all your global payroll providers and that vendor doesn't offer what you want or need, then maybe it's a pointless task. But I would always recommend that you continually communicate with your providers around your plans, and they should be regularly meeting with you as an account manager, because you might be surprised that they offer a much broader service, and you just don't know.
No.
Matt, anything else?
The only thing I would say with that is that, obviously there's consolidation and there's lots of reasons why you change providers, but if it's service related, then don't be surprised that your incumbent provider might not be very forthcoming with data or make it particularly easy for you. I think that any new provider that is worth their salt will take that into account and work with you and be flexible to work with you to get the data that's required and plan that into the implementation and onboarding process. But it's not always plain sailing.
Okay, just on the RFP side, so those of you that are GPA members, we do actually have a health kit that helps you prepare for an RFP, and it is a free resource, so we do have that. So if any of you are members, then please reach out and I can point you in the right direction. So talking about RFPs, based on your experience, what is the general timeline of a payroll RFP? Is that a bit of $1 million question, is it?
Yes, well, it kind of depends on the size of the procurement process, right? If you're looking to procure a couple of hundred people across the globe, and you've already got a short list of vendors, you could probably do an informal process in 2 to 3 months. If you're looking at a global payroll solution with tens of thousands of employees, you should probably factor in somewhere in the region of kind of 4 to 6 months end to end. Because even when you've selected a vendor, you've still got to go through lots of due diligence, lots of procurement necessities. You've got to go through contractuals as well. And then from an onboarding point of view, it really depends. I've seen some global payroll implementations run for decades. So you've got to really, there's no hard and fast rule to it. What I would say is try not to rush it, because it's a really important career defining move that you're going to be making on behalf of the business. So afford the time to do it correctly.
I think the first port of call also is, check your incumbent contractual position, because that can determine how long this is going to take as well. Not often, but a number of occasions we've got to the end of the process only to find out that the prospect has committed to another year or something. So always check your contractual position before engaging. The other point is that sometimes it can be what we would call a distress purchase, which is we need someone paid. In fact, we've only done one this week where they need paying mid-June. And we will have to sort of run around and make that happen. But I think generally, Fran's on the money. It's between 3 and 6 months, depending on the number of employees and the complexity and your current contractual position.
I think actually, Fran, one of the key things that you said, well, one of the things you did say was so key, is that it is actually a career defining decision, and you are so right. You've really got to take your time over it, because unfortunately and I'm sure you guys have seen it during our years in payroll, we've seen the consequences of rushing it and maybe getting it wrong, and unfortunately what happens. So you're definitely right there. When considering a new payroll supplier, where do you see the biggest trade-offs if you have to focus on the top 3 to 5? Is that an easy one to answer, or is that an offline one?
Well, I think it is it's price versus functionality versus complexity, right? So the global payroll industry is working fast to catch up from a technology point of view, but there's still some challenges. So in particular, where you've got software providers not just providing in-country functionality, but the kind of infrastructure over the top, you're going to want a lot of efficiencies that you probably expect in a domestic solution that's just not there in a global solution. There's still a lot of sticky tape going on. So I think everyone would like the moon on a stick, but it's what price you're prepared to pay, particularly from an onboarding point of view. You've got to measure the ongoing cost for it versus the upfront cost. Sometimes people want the moon on a stick but don't realize the cost of the moon or the stick, and I think that's really key to the process. The other thing is, don't sacrifice quality on price, because what you're really evaluating is the cost, actually. So you can get a cheap price point from a vendor, but are you going to get a quality service? If not, it could cost you more in the long run for employee satisfaction or manual workarounds.
And also sometimes the hidden extras as well, isn't it? Once you start working with a vendor and there's the hidden extras of a little bit more for this and that.
Yeah. The only other thing I'd say on that is coverage. So if your chosen vendor or current vendor is not in country, then the trade-off is they need time in order to do their due diligence to make sure that that they are the right business and the right partner to service your organization. And my advice would be not to have that rushed, and any vendor that is doing it quickly and just popping up in a new country, then you need to be sure that they're going to carry on providing the same high levels of service that they would do to a standard primary country.
There's a few people that are asking questions about your services. So what I would suggest is that we'll send these questions on to Fran and Matt, and they'll contact you offline. I think that would be the better thing. People are asking what countries you deal with, and some people want to speak to you directly, so which is great. So I'll send those to you guys, and then you can contact directly. Somebody has also said that it'd be good to have a global payroll vendor that have PEOs with a vendor matrix that Iris are filling in. Then hopefully that will have a list there for you with all the global payroll providers that do actually have the PEOs as well. I'm just having a look at the time, and I think we have time for maybe one more question. Bear with me. We've got quite a few come through, so thank you so much for everyone getting involved. Okay, how important is it that there is a GDPR language in the vendor contract?
Well, it's very important, but it also depends on where the company that procuring the platform is headquartered in. Obviously, GDPR is a European directive. Many other continents and jurisdictions follow that as a best practice, but I think certainly it's a great directive on data security and data processing. So I'd say it's pretty key. But if you're in the US and you're procuring a solution over there, it's probably not the language you would typically see. I think the other thing with that, Mel, is as well, let's remember that global payroll can be quite fragmented. It's made up of in-country partners. So it's really key that you ask the question, is it delivered by the vendor or is it delivered by a partner? But also ensure that you've got the same data security policies extend to that partner network as well.
Okay, so we do have some more, but I think we're just going to run out of time now to answer any further questions. But as I said, I will forward these on to Fran and his team, and they'll contact you directly. Just want to say thank you to everyone who, the audience who did get involved and ask the questions. It's been great, and some really fantastic answers to those questions. So thank you, Fran and Matt. Before we leave, if anybody wants to contact you, is it okay via LinkedIn?
LinkedIn, emails, we're happy to engage in any way possible.
Fab. Okay, and as I said, the webinar will be sent out to everyone, and also a copy of the slides. So thank you once again, and we will be running another webinar with Fran and his team in a few weeks' time. So we look forward to seeing you in a few weeks.
Brilliant, and thanks Mel, and thanks GPA audience. It was a delight to speak to you.
Thanks, Mel.
Thank you. Bye.